The Etoile is the personification of tanky meets floaty. In exchange for being limited in the ways it can heal, it gains incredible damage reduction. On top of that, every time it takes damage, its damage reduction is further boosted for a short time. Then, when it comes to offense, when Etoiles string together attacks in a specific way, their Photon arts gain damage bonuses and have their PP consumption reduced. For its weapons, it uses wands, soaring blades, and double sabers. And as a Scion class, it uses these weapons a bit differently than other classes that use those weapons, as it has a whole new set of attacks for every weapon that are all learned by default when unlocking the class and never need to be upgraded either. Furthermore, on the Etoile, each of these weapons has access to a form of block or parry. Besides that though, each weapon works completely different than one another besides being floaty. Then, when it comes to mags, the Etoile has a skill that, to put simply, takes the sum of any and all offensive power stats in a mag and gives that sum to each of your melee, ranged, and tech powers, just like on Hero. So, it can essentially make use of any mag, so long as it does not have any dex or defensive stats in it. Though, like all Scion classes, the Etoile does have a requirement to unlock, which is to acquire the title for having 2 level 75 classes. After that, you can go and talk to the NPC Coffee at the right side quest counter and pick up the client order for Etoile. Once that's done, there's 2 more things you might want to take note of. The first is the Etoile specific NPC class trainer, Lucote, who's located in the middle left side of the gate area center staircase. She will have a bunch of client orders for you to do, some of which will end up rewarding you with Etoile skill points. The next would be the Etoile practice quest, which will help you get a better feel of how the Etoile works in general. We'll be covering way more in this video than the practice quest has to offer, but it's a nice little quest to fall back on if you're still having trouble. Now, I'd like to go over the skill tree first, as we won't be spending much time on it, and it will give you a much better understanding of the class's inner workings. What you will be seeing is a generic, level 95, 109 skill point Etoile main class build that uses all 3 weapons. Generally, the only thing you might be changing from this is to not take weapon-specific skills for weapons you don't use, and then put those points wherever else you want. As far as building Etoile as a subclass, we'll be talking about that at the end of the section. Starting at the top, as usual, there are a bunch of skills that are free to learn but require a specific level to unlock. We then have all the pre-learned skills off to the right, and this includes the Etoile mag skill that, to put simply, allows you to make use of any offensive power mag, and this can be used as a subclass too. The skill Wand Augment Power Boost is also auto-learned, and this takes the highest power stat affixed on your wand and adds that to your wand's base damage. This means that even though Etoile scales off melee power, if you have a tech power affixed wand, you can still use it just fine on Etoile. Like all classes, the level 80 skill gives up to 5% damage for 5 skill points. Then, the level 85 skill, Etoile's Will save you from a 1 otherwise lethal hit per quest, and when activated, you will be invulnerable for 5 seconds and have your HP, PP, and focus completely restored. From here on out, let's look at this as 3 different parts. The topmost part here is all about the Etoile's damage reduction and damage boosts. The second part here consists of skills that pertain to specific weapons, and we'll be going over all of these in much greater detail at the beginning of each of their respective weapon sections later in this video. The last row at the bottom contains straight setup skills that are generally not worth your skill points as a main class if you plan to use all 3 weapons, at least at the level 95 cap. That all being said, the only section we need to go over now in the skill tree is the one up top, and I'd actually like to further split that one up into 2 more parts as well, as there's a bunch of skills on the top that have to deal with damage reduction and healing, while the ones sectioned below have to do with damage bonuses and resource management. Starting with the top section, but working our way from the bottom up, we first have Etoile Boost, which reduces the damage you take by 15% every time you take damage, and this can stack up to 75%. However, you will lose 25% of this damage reduction every second. We then have the Etoile's signature skill, Damage Bouncer, which at max gives a flat 70% damage reduction in return for only being able to heal through mate and atomizer items, and a few other skills that we'll be going over in just a minute. Do keep in mind that these healing limitations work the same no matter what level you put this skill, so you should really be maxing it to get the full 70% reduction. Next, Stationary Physique prevents knockback and knockups after standing still for about 1 second. Now you will be moving around a lot as an Etoile, but for only 1 point, this can be really helpful. Universal Mate Up simply increases the healing of healing items for everyone in the area by 10%, and also returns some PP to the user depending on the item used. All in all, it sounds nice, but it's rather impractical when you can just use a Mate Maniac ring instead, though they do stack. Next, with Perfect Guard PP Ale, you will restore 10 PP to yourself and all party members when perfect guarding, which is when you successfully block right before being hit. You will likely be blocking a lot as an Etoile, so for only 1 point, this is pretty nice. Overdrive is an active recovery skill that can be used from your sub palette and is one of the only other ways you can heal. Every 3 minutes, you will gain 1 stock of this and can hold up to 2 stocks at a time. And when using one, you will completely restore all HP and PP to everyone in your party, and for 20 seconds, you and your party will also gain an additional 50 max PP. And lastly for this section, there's a 12 HP Restaurant, which when maxed will restore 2.5% of your max HP every 3 seconds when you are under 50% HP. Now, this may not seem like much, but due to Etoile's massive damage reduction, hanging around 50% HP is not nearly as dangerous as it is in other classes. In the end though, it's not really necessary if you are good about blocking and using healing items, but it's a nice skill to have to keep you somewhat healthy. That being said, you may want this to be one of these skills you max last. All attack bonus Etoile gives unconditional boost to all powers and pets. Then, flat attack bonus gives a damage bonus to normal attacks and photon arts that are not perfect attacked. Now, this is actually pretty nice to have, but it's also something you may want to max last, as you are highly incentivized to be perfect attacking when playing Etoile because of the next 2 skills. The first of which is Perfect Attack Bonus, which gives your perfect attacks an additional 15% damage. And then there's Perfect Attack Critical, which gives your perfect attacks up to a 50% crit rate. Next, Same Art's PP Preservation reduces the PP cost of PAs when used consecutively. As you increase the skill's level, the limit for how much you can reduce this goes up, but each hit will contribute less to reaching that limit. For instance, at level 1, it only takes 1 PA to reach the maximum benefit of 10 PP cost reduction. However, at level 10, it takes 16 PAs to reach its maximum benefit, but that ends up being an 80% cost reduction. So, the idea is to find a happy medium between those 2 points where you don't have to use too many PAs to get the full benefits, but at the same time make sure they are worthwhile. And many seem to agree that the sweet spot happens to be around level 3, at least when using Etoile as a main class. Besides level 3 only taking 3 PAs to get to a reasonable cost reduction, this also lines up with the next skill, Tech Arts Count Bonus. And what this skill does is grant a damage bonus and PP cost reduction to PAs in a combo. And in this case, a combo is considered stringing together 2 different PAs. And once you do, that second PA will count towards this bonus, and depending on the level of the skill, you can keep this bonus going for up to 2 more uses of that same PA. To clarify, this means that so long as you are using different PAs back to back, you will always be getting this 15% damage bonus. However, since we want to make use of Same Art's PP Preservation, which benefits you from using the same PA consecutively, we should max out Counts bonus to be able to string together the same PA up to 3 times in a row without losing the damage bonus. So, with these 2 skills, your combos will go something like PA1, PA2, 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 in which PA1 would be your opener, and since PA2 is different than PA1, it would be considered the first part in the combo, and could then be used twice more while maintaining the bonuses. This same combo could then be continued in a bunch of different ways, so long as the next PA used is different from PA2. So, you could either use another buffer PA and repeat the combo again, or go right into a 3-set of a different PA. Now, this might sound a little confusing at first, but if you take anything away from this, just try to remember to alternate PAs at the beginning of a fight to start the combo, and then do different PAs in sets of 3 to reduce their PP cost. And in case you were wondering, you can weave normal attacks and weapon actions into these combos without interrupting them. And you do not have to perfect attack to gain any of these bonuses either, but I would really suggest you try to. Lastly, there are the Etoile weapon bonuses that each give a 55% damage bonus so long as you are using wands, double sabers, or soaring blades. And that's about it for Etoile's skill tree as a main class. Though, as a subclass, you can take advantage of almost everything mentioned so far outside of a few select skills that are main class only skills. That being said, as a sub, you can instead take some of those straight stat up skills at the very bottom that we originally skipped over. You may also want to consider putting more than 3 points into Same Art's PP Preservation with an Etoile sub if you want to spam the same PA a lot. However, keep in mind that both Same Art's PP Preservation and Tech Art's Count Bonus do not affect techniques whatsoever. Moving on to the weapons, and starting with the wand, its normal attack is highly mobile, and split up into 3 parts. The first part hitting once, the second hitting twice, and the third part hitting 3 times. Each of these individual hits per part deal about the same damage and restore some PP. So, when you add them all up, the normal attack ends up being great for resource management. When performing a step attack, you will fire out a single golden projectile that does moderate damage and restores some PP. Moving on to the weapon action, when pressing it normally, it acts as a 360-degree block. If you then take the skill Wand Teleport in the skill tree, by holding the weapon action down for a fraction of a second, or until you hear this sound, you can then let go and then teleport a short distance while being protected. At the same time, you will also fire out the same projectile you get with the step attack. That being said, this is great to use for protection, repositioning, spamming to regen PP at range, or to even pick off weaker single targets. Though do be careful, as if you hold this down for too long it'll start to drain focus. And speaking of focus, so long as you picked up the skill Etoile wand gear, you will have the wand focus gauge above your weapon palette. This will then constantly fill so long as you're moving, dealing damage, or blocking with the weapon action. Just like the wand's normal attack, you will have a lot of freedom of movement with every PA, so the easiest way to always be accumulating focus is to be moving. Now, once you've gained some focus, you can then spend it in a few different ways. First off, you can hold the weapon action down to keep the shield bubble up at the cost of draining your focus every second. Alternatively, you can hold down the weapon action until a certain amount of focus has been consumed, and then release it to teleport a short distance and create a big AoE blast around yourself. Consuming 1/3 or more of your focus will create a single, fast AoE blast. However, consuming 2/3 or more will generate an even bigger AoE blast that hits multiple times, during which you will be invulnerable and can move around. There's then one more function the weapon action has on wand, and that is, if it's used directly after any PA, you will hear a chime, and then change that PA into what's known as a focused PA. These focused PAs generally do more damage, but in a smaller area, and are sometimes quicker too. Furthermore, because of the skill Wand F- in the skill tree, when using focused PAs and combos, you will gain an increase to your movement speed for a short time. Do be careful though, as if you focus PAs too soon, as in before the white circle fully appears, you will not have a perfect attack window at the end of that PA. And this is actually quite important, as the Etoile gains significant bonuses from its skill tree when perfect attacking. Getting to the PAs, we first have Luminous Flare. And when used normally, it will emit an energy beam for a few seconds that does multiple hits of damage to everything in a line. The reach on this is actually pretty incredible, and it has a deceivingly tall vertical hitbox too. When focusing this PA, you will instead perform one very quick and powerful blast that has a much shorter reach. In general, this PA can work great in lots of different situations depending on the version you use, but it does consume your resources very fast, and you cannot cancel out of it whatsoever, so just be careful how you use it. Next up is Prism Circular, and when used normally, it will have you throw out a swirl of energy that will damage everything in an AoE that it passes through. Alternatively, this can be held to allow you to move around and deal damage to everything around you at the cost of about 10 pp per second. And when let go, it'll still throw out that energy swirl at the end. Furthermore, this can also move you vertically so long as you are locked on. Then, when focusing Prism Circular, right before you would toss out the energy swirl, you will instead perform a stronger close range attack. And best of all, this can actually even be used after traveling with the first part of the PA too. Black Hole Rapture will create a black hole a set distance away from you that will suck everything in, and then follow up by creating a bunch of explosions, dealing AoE damage for a few seconds. Focusing this PA will instead create a single ongoing explosion that also has a smaller radius, but will be significantly stronger and lasts a few seconds longer as well. And since the focus part is after the initial black hole, you will always have the suction effect. Now, no matter which version of this PA you use, you will always be lowered a little bit when used in the air. Furthermore, both variants can be stacked on top of each other for more damage, though you would generally just use the normal version for mobbing and the focused version for bossing when the boss is stationary. For the last of the wand PAs, there's Glitter Stripe, and with this, no matter which version you use, you'll first flip up into the air, during which time you will be invulnerable, and you'll then fire off an attack that will always aim 45 degrees downwards from your location, and also has a fixed distance of which it can land. This means that you need to learn the exact distance and angle of this to use it effectively, so I suggest spending a little bit of time on the rock bear practice to get its feel. Then, the focused version works and looks almost exactly the same, but it's slightly stronger while having a much tighter AoE. Now, because the first flip increases your altitude and is protected, this can be used back to back a few times to gain the proper height to land subsequent attacks, or it can even be used as a protected disengage. Getting to the Soaring Blades, and starting with their weapon action, when pressed normally, it will act as a 360-degree block around your character, and can be used in the middle of any Soaring Blades attack animation without cancelling that attack. However, when using the weapon action during or immediately after dodging, you will perform what's known as a sidestep edge, where you toss out 2 spinning blades that will deal damage and restore some PP. Now, so long as you took these skills Soaring Blades gear in the skill tree, you will have access to their focus gauge, which you can fill up pretty fast by simply doing damage and blocking with the weapon action. Then, when you have at least 50% focus, when pressing the weapon action again after a sidestep edge, you will perform what's called a connect, which is a hard-hitting spinning attack with both blades. However, if you do this when at full focus, you can press the weapon action again after the connect lands to perform what's known as a full connect, where you will combine your blades together into one big sword to execute an extremely strong attack with really long range. If you have the Ring Surefire Connect, you can instead go right into a full connect by holding the weapon action down after performing a sidestep edge. And best of all, this only takes 50% of your focus too. Now, no matter which version of full connect you end up doing, if you ever need to cancel it, you can do so with a dodge before it's released. And this will save your focus too, so long as the attack did not go off. There's then one more reason why you might want to use these special focus-based attacks as much as possible. And that's because with the skill Soaring Blade's Focus Heat Up, after performing a connect or full connect, you will gain a yellow aura for about 15 seconds, during which time you will have a 50% boost to focus accumulation, and this is usually more than enough time to max out the gauge again. So using these special attacks essentially gives you a buff to be able to do them again sooner. Moving on to the Soaring Blade's normal attacks, they are split into 3 quick parts, all of which allow for slight repositioning while attacking and restore a significant amount of PP per hit. And when taking the skill Soaring Blade's Lock-On Chase in the skill tree, your normal attacks will then have gap closing properties. In general, the range for this is actually pretty short, but so long as you are locked onto something, you can keep normal attacking and will slowly edge yourself closer to your target, no matter its elevation. Next, the Soaring Blade Step attack will have you perform a sliding lunge that hits twice for moderate damage and also restores some PP. Getting to the PAs, there's first Radiant Sting, which is your main gap closer. 4 blades will also appear during the second half of the animation and will strike outwards in opposite directions near the end, allowing it to be decent enough for single target or tight-knit mobbing. Next up is Vertical Flow, and this one will have you quickly jump up into the air to then come crashing down to the ground, during which time you will also summon 2 swords that will attack your target and have incredible tracking. In general, it's very fast and can be used to quickly travel vertically. Distortion Pierce will stab your blades into an enemy one at a time, and then pull them apart, while at the same time also summoning 2 big swords to slash inwards. The animation is rather long, but it does great damage, accumulates focus very fast, and is also your main mobbing tool, but it works just as well on single targets too. For the last of the Soaring Blade's PAs, there's Light Wave, and this will have you perform 4 slashes in total that will each send out a damaging wave of light, and the last slash will also send out 2 summon swords as well. In general, this is really nice to use on mobile and or range targets, but does cost the most PP of all Soaring Blade's PAs, and is also the only Soaring Blade PA with no super armor. Moving on to the Double Sabers. Unlike the other Etoile weapons, the Double Saber's weapon action functions as a parry instead of a block, and if you parry just before being hit, you will hear this audio cue, and then see a gold ring around your character that lasts for about 1 second, during which time you can press the weapon action again to follow up with a strong gap-closing counter. And while we're still on the subject of countering, if you take the skill Double Saber Sidestep Guard, you can counter a locked-on enemy's attack when dodging forwards through an attack, and the counter itself will activate automatically. Then, with the skill Double Saber Sidestep Slide, when pressing the dodge button twice, you will start to slide instead of walking, and this can even be used when in the air, though you will start to descend slowly. Lastly, this can even be chained into a normal attack to perform a stronger version of a step attack. Next up, with the skill Quick Take, after every PA or weapon action attack, you will see a yellow line appear over your character. If you use a normal attack when this is visible, you will perform a very long range protected gap closer, and upon reaching your target, you will deal moderate damage and restore a bit of PP. And if during the yellow line's duration, you instead use the weapon action, you will perform a shorter gap closer that will act as a parry and has guard frames. Next up, we have the Double Saber's charged attacks, but for those we need focus, which can be accumulated by simply doing damage. Then, once you have at least 1/3 of a bar of focus, you can hold down the normal attack to perform a stronger AoE attack that restores a lot of PP and can stun. Furthermore, this can also be used with a normal attack version of Quick Take, by simply holding down the normal attack when the yellow line appears instead of tapping it. Now, there is however one more feature that the Double Saber's focus has, and that's that if you take any damage while having enough focus, that instance of damage will be reduced by 30%, but you will also lose 1/3 of your focus gauge. That being said, the Double Saber's focus gauge builds up very fast, so try to use these charged attacks as soon as possible, otherwise you might lose the chance to use them. The last and possibly most important thing to take note of before we get into the attacks is the skill Etoile Double Saber Skip Arts, which allows us to skip the first half of every Double Saber Photon art when not using a directional input, and will instead have us go right into the damaging part at the end of the PA. Since the first half of every PA is usually pretty drawn out or has to do with mobility, this allows us to use entire PAs or just parts of them depending on the situation. Getting to the attacks, its normal attack is split into 3 parts. The first 2 parts hit twice each, and the third hitting 3 times. Just like the wand, each of these individual hits per part deal about the same damage and restore some PP, so it totals to a lot of PP regen. For its step attack, you will simply perform a quick single hit uppercut. Moving on to the PAs, with Absolute Quasar, you will travel a good distance while being invulnerable. Then slash a few times, and end with a single AoE attack that has 360-degree guard frames until the perfect attack bubble appears. Now, its skip arts variant will only perform the circular AoE attack, so at first it may only seem like it's good for mobbing. However, due to how fast it is, you can use this PA to quickly reset your tech arts count bonus, or even combo it directly into a quick take to get to your target much faster. Next up is Saber Destruction, which will move you in a desired direction while spinning your saber around you horizontally. The second half of the animation, which is also the skip arts variant, will then have you spin your saber upwards, during which time you will have guard frames, and then end with an unprotected swing downwards. All in all, this PA is pretty great for sustained DPS, though you may only want to use the full version for repositioning and mobbing. We then have Shooting Star, which will first prop you up into the air with iframes and then have you perform a single unprotected slash. For its second half, or skip arts variant, you will then follow up by retreating backwards a short distance while dropping Photon sabers onto your target, during which time there will be guard frames until the last hit lands. In general, its second half is great for some quick range DPS, while also being a protected disengage that you can essentially spam. Lastly, for the double saber PAs, there's Celestial Collide, which starts with a quick front flip kick and then goes right into its second part, which has you form a big photon blade that you will then kick out, which will recoil you backwards and do lots of damage to everything in a line in front of you. There is super armor throughout this entire PA, so you don't have to worry about being cancelled out of it. Furthermore, there are guard frames present while the blade is forming, and last until it's complete. As always, ring choice is generally up to you, depending on your playstyle, but I have a few suggestions. With a Surefire Connect ring, when using the Soaring blades, you can instead go right into a full connect by holding the weapon action down after performing a sidestep edge. And best of all, this only takes 50% of your focus too. Atomizer Fanatic is an amazing ring that will allow you to use atomizer items twice as fast, will increase their potency by 60%, and will also grant invulnerability when using them too. So with this, Star Atomizers become a very fast and reliable AoE heal, and you can now safely and quickly resurrect other players. There's then Mate Maniac, which is very similar to the previous, as it increases mate items' use speed and potency. However, it does not offer any invulnerability like the Atomizer ring does. Even so, it's still incredibly useful on Etoile since you can only heal through items and your own skills. Leaping Dodge, at max, can be used from the sub-palette every 5 seconds to perform a jump that will take you higher than a double jump would, and grants invulnerability during most of the animation. You can also perform a single jump after this to go even higher too. A Mag Excite ring will increase the rate at which your mag attacks and increases its damage by 300%. If you use a ranged tech like Megid for your mag's auto action, you'll be doing a bit of extra damage and quite frequently. Party Toughness can be pretty helpful as it increases your damage reduction as your party size goes up, granting a 5% damage reduction when you're in a full party of 4. And for the last one I'll mention, a Crit Strike combined ring is nice as it grants 20% crit rate and 3% crit damage to all powers. Since Etoile scales completely off of melee power, you could also just use a Crit Strike melee ring instead. And that should just about do it for everything you might want to know about the Etoile before jumping in. There's definitely a bit more to the class than what I've shown here today, but I hope this has at least given you a solid foundation to work off of. And with that, take care.